All right, hey guys. We're still waiting on a couple of people to show up. Um, Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to Jacob Martin for kind of spearheading this and getting it started. I'm gonna try to figure out how to record this. This is my first time hosting a Twitter Spaces, so with me. But yeah, I mean, why don't we just like I guess go down like the list of speakers right now? We'll talk about DAOs a little bit. They're kind of why today is significant in the DAO universe, and people can talk about what they want, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. In the meantime, want to uh, tweet something or reply to a tweet that I wrote maybe like 10-15 minutes ago with any questions you might have, and I can bring them up too in case we don't have time to get to everything. But yeah, so like I'm G Money. I'm an NFT collector and investor, and I've been pretty active in the space for a while now. I'm a member of multiple DAOs. And so when Jacob wrote that tweet this morning, I just hit out a couple members of the DAOs that I'm in and be like, hey, like this is important. Like let's just talk about it. So why don't we just start with Aaron, who I consider like the godfather of all DAOs.
That's probably Dan Larimer, but thanks, Gmoney. I really appreciate the invite. I'm Aaron. I helped pull together a bunch of DAOs over the past year, including the WoW, Flamingo, Neptune, Museo, Dark Horse DAO, Alien DAO. So I've been doing quite a bit. Before all the DAO stuff, I played a small role helping to launch Ethereum, and I've worked with a bunch of great teams. So really happy to be here. And hey, Pre's kind of the other half of
Hey, that's that's funny. Scary place there. So hi everyone. I am Bree. I help Aaron and the rest of the Open Law team put together a few DAOs. I guess specifically in the NFT space, Flamingo, and then one that's sort of silently launched a little bit called Museo, and a few more to come as well. I've been with the Open Law team for a few years now, and then prior to that, spent some time at R3, a state agency in New York that was doing some crypto regulation, and then in a prior life or previous to that, worked in DC in politics. And thank you so much for hosting this, G Money.
Cool, Sergio, you want to go next, or Jameis? It doesn't matter.
Sure, I'll jump on. Hi, I'm Sergito. I'm an NFT collector. I'm a member of the Metaverse DAO. In my real life, I'm a self-directed art blocks. We're an institutional custody software provider for digital assets. And yeah, I got involved in Metaverse DAO because I really believe in the future of the Metaverse as the best representation of where humanity will be going forward, where we can all come across together from different continents, different backgrounds, different skin colors, and build a better place to interact and really lever everybody's skills across the globe. So thanks, Gmoney, for the invite and for hosting the space.
Yeah, my name is Jameis Johnson. I am the Chief Pleasing Officer over at PlacerDAO. We're looking to collect pieces that are kind of iconic and fall into the Museum of Internet Culture. Before that, I was a DGen, DeFi Summer DGen, and then before that, I used to do a lot of like machine learning and generative art. And I am very proud to be on G Money's first ever Spaces. I didn't realize it was your first ever.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. And Jacob, you wanna round it out with an introduction, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I've got this like cheeky Twitter title at the NFT attorney because my wife's in marketing and she thought it would be funny if I was going to work on this stuff. Um, but that's not a real thing. I'm just an attorney. I understand smart contracts. I've been in blockchain for a few years. And yeah, I mean, for the last 6 months or so, I guess I kind of gave up the entirety of my like startup focused, financing focused, private practice to be like, okay, I'll do NFTs, whatever that means from like a legal perspective. So I've spent time working with artists or collectors or IP or whatever, making sure people don't jump on landmines and whatnot, and everything seems to be coalescing in and around DAOs. And I was lucky enough to have coffee with Aaron just a couple days ago in Brooklyn, or yes, maybe, I can't remember. But yeah, he pretty much just solidified it for me that like this is the way. So yeah, really happy to see it happening. And I probably get too many DMs per week about DAOs. and I didn't create them, and I'm not the one. So I'm learning everything I can along the way, and happy to help.
Cool, awesome. So thanks for the introductions, guys. So I guess let's just start with, I guess, a brief introduction for people that might know exactly what DAOs are, what they're capable of, and then why is today important, right? What makes today DAO Day so special?
Yeah, I can kick that off. So DAOs, it's a super broad category for folks that haven't been in the crypto space for a while, and something that's been kicking around and started getting kicked around uh, way back in 2013. So even before Ethereum's launch, Dan Larimer, who put together Project EOS, started thinking about how to use Bitcoin not just to transfer value, but to represent interests in a company, a corporation. So he came up with this concept of a decentralized autonomous corporation, or DAC. Um, Lots of folks geeked out at it at the time and thought it was a super fascinating concept. Vitalik began to generalize a lot of those thoughts and memorialize a lot of those thoughts in the Ethereum white paper. And it really kind of took hold in the Ethereum community. And the concept around it now is not just to represent interest in the company, but to really build a new form of internet native organization. So one that is either entirely managed by some sort of smart contract based system or algorithm, or something that's more participatory in nature that really has humans that are driving the decision making, but there's no manager, there's no central party that's in charge of it. So one analogy that I kind of like and have used, it's, DAOs, at least as people are thinking about them today, they're really kind of like a Discord group or subreddit or a message board, some sort of internet watering hole with a bank account and a bunch more rules. And through that process, you're able to get a whole bunch of folks involved and kind of get this hive mind type approach where people are sifting through the internet, they see opportunities, they're able to kind of push them together, make investments. And then if it's a DAO that's more focused on managing a smart contract, you kind of have the folks that are using, supported, created the platform all under one hood who can help steer the direction of that, which I think is pretty healthy. Today is notable, and then I'll stop sucking up here, in part because in Wyoming, and I helped pull together this bill and draft it along with a handful of others, you can actually DAO. You can create a legal entity that is named a DAO, it's recognized as a DAO, and solve some of the tricky, knotty, and sometimes boring legal and technical challenges related to it. So it's pretty exciting. For somebody that's been deep in the space for a long time, it's just amazing to see how far ETH's come as an ecosystem. The fact that prominent state and a prominent country has decided to recognize this new form of organization and help create avenues for them to grow, I think is pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Thanks for sharing that. Like I think I've been trying to become personally like a member of as many DAOs as I can, just because I love that hive mind of being able to kind of pool resources together and kind of do like all go towards like the same exact goal, right? And like to me, like I think that's been really cool. One of the things that like has really drawn me to the DAOs that I'm a part of is also like the mission statements and like how you like see them evolve and over time, and just the activity that everything happens around that. So like to see that finally coming out and having some sort of legal structure, it's like to me it takes blockchain to like the next level, right? Like it's like this is kind of like it's coming out moment almost. Um, yeah, I mean, like, I guess with that, right? Like, Sergito, like, let's just talk about, I guess, what, like, Metaverse style. What are you guys doing? I mean, so I know Flamingo is a legal entity right from the start. I'm not exactly sure what the legal entities are yet for all the other DAOs, but I know, like, you people run the gamut of, being fully legal, but then all the way down to it's just a group of people, like-minded people coming together and going for investing in the same cause. So I'd love to kind of hear your guys' takes of how you guys are approaching it.
Sure. Yeah. So Metaverse DAO, it's 19 of us, but we have a broader public Discord in which we interact with builders of the metaverse. Our main focus right now has been in developing parcels and commercial activity within crypto voxels, which has been our preferred metaverse. However, we're looking to expand to the different metaverses. As you and everybody knows, in NFTs and crypto, there's only so much bandwidth everybody has. There's only 24 hours to a day, and as much as we all try to do, everything that we want, that we can, we run out of time. So we've decided to focus on crypto voxels for now. We have a very solid team of builders, and what we've done is offer our services of development and event production to other DAOs, art projects, so they can host events on CryptoVoxel. So, for example, I don't know if you remember the 4156 event that was hosted and put together by Metaverse DAO. So yeah, no, for me, I think you hit it on the head when you said like-minded people. I was thinking about how employers, people have to go work somewhere, and not everybody wants to be there or do what they are doing there, but they have to, right? You have to earn an income and put a roof over your head. DAOs, you're doing something where you want to be there, and you're working with people that are thinking hopefully in the same direction that you are, and you're really contributing value to something that is you're fully interested in. And for me, that's kind of been the biggest joy of being in Metaverse DAO, and also poking around and seeing what other DAOs I can participate in, because I really want to find those people that think the same way, and that can help me and challenge me in growing myself and in my career and just my development. But yeah, so that's Metaverse DAO in a few words.
And Jameis, if you don't mind talking about, I mean, I love the origin story of Pleaser, and I love being active in that chat and everything that's going on there. Like, if you could just give us like a brief origin story on Pleaser and like what the plans are from there.
Yeah, I mean, it all started because I was following Leighton's tweets because he's going to have a Unisox dinner in New York, and one day, this is Leighton Cusack of Pull It Together. One day, he said, let's buy People Pleaser's art that she was auctioning, which was the Uniswap V3 piece, the big grand debut piece. And we all recognized that she was kind of this defining artistic essence of this period in time called DeFi Summer. It was a very special time, and she had, contributed to all of these products. And it was clear she was just kind of the iconic artist of that era. So she did her first NFT auction, and we just started sucking in the most interesting people in the DeFi space. One by one, the Telegram group started filling up, and we were bidding. DAOs are struggling with the technological constraints of multi-sigs and connectivity. And at the time, we didn't even have the ability to connect with our multi-sig. So we just, trusted Leighton, and we all gave him a ridiculous amount of money. And we ended up bringing in Andrew Kang because he was bidding against us. And we just kind of filled up this giant pool of capital. And we got a piece, and then we had formed a collective, and we decided to kind of distribute our own token internally, pro rata, based off of contributions. We made a multi-sig that decided to abide by the social contract that whatever we voted on as a governing body, the multi-sig would uphold. We have Ether in our treasury. We have NFTs in our treasury. We have protocol network tokens in our treasury. But yeah, I think that like a good transition and a good point of discussion is a DAO is basically an abstraction of collectivism or of collective organization. We've built out the infrastructure for single wallets, and it's pretty good at this point. But the infrastructure for like rebuilding a corporation or rebuilding a government on chain is still just coming online. Someone had a tweet the other day that said, a startup in Silicon Valley usually uses like 8 different software tools. And it's at that moment, that inflection point where we're still trying to figure out how DAOs can organize and how they can, basically re-architect these corporate and governmental structures that we have learned so many lessons for the last hundreds of years, the last centuries. So after we organized, we were flat, and I offered my services to kind of just be, run point for the entire organization. And I think that, yeah, there's a lot more to the story that I won't get into, but I would, I'm a big advocate of forming hierarchical structures early on and trying to not move forward with a flat DAO. All the lessons that we've learned over all of these years, I think, are just going to be rebuilt in software tools on top of the blockchain. And I'm a big advocate of that. But yeah, that's kind of the inception story.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I totally agree with you. that's been like one of, I think, my main issue that I've seen with DAOs, and I'd love to get like everybody else's take on here, where it's like, corporate structure and I guess governmental and whatever democracy that exists in the current state of the world, like it exists for a reason, right? Because like you can't have a huge number of individuals all being decision makers in every possible decision, right? So it's like, to me, I kind of feel like there's like a learning curve where we have to go from total flat democracy to what you were saying is like to kind of like electing a board, like a corporate board, right? Like corporate board structure works for a reason. So I'd love to know like what you guys think up here on the panel, and hear your feedback and your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we've taken a different approach. There is no hierarchy, and I think it's worked pretty well. And that was intentional. I mean, I think in part when you set up that hierarchy, you lose some of the information sharing advantages, and people can't hop in or don't feel as inclined to hop in. So I think you're going to just see different models emerge. I definitely agree that you don't need somebody to weigh in on every decision, and there's probably going to be tools that make it easier for either smaller groups to be in charge of certain decisions, or potentially even like one person being in charge of some decisions, which I guess is a little bit of hierarchy, but it's not 100% clear what that looks like. And I guess I'm a little bit skeptical about having managers, because I think if you want to have managers, there's existing structures that work pretty well for that, like if it's a venture style, venture capital fund, etc. So I'm not sure that that's how it's going to play out. I definitely agree with the point that you raised, James, just about the different tooling. Like the DAO tooling today just feels very mature. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to enhance and improve that. I think we're seeing great projects that are beginning to emerge to begin to tackle some of those issues, and I'm hoping next year or two we kind of get there. The way I'd say we kind of view it, and the way that the Lao Flamingo and Neptune's organized, it has a team that's us that acts as a service provider. So what we do is we handle all the boring parts of operating a DAO. So there's like the tax accounting pieces, the legal structuring pieces. If we need to settle a transaction, like helping to sign the agreements, if it's been approved by vote, herding cats and pushing things along if that's needed, without having any decision-making authority. And that seems to have worked pretty well. So it's one analogy that we like to say is the DAOs that we put together, they're like reverse mullets. Like we handle all the boring business stuff on the back so people can have fun in the front. Like so it can be a party in the front. And I think that's worked pretty well and is pretty scalable. So that's just a different approach to a similar problem.
I think that it also it's like dependent on the mission and dependent on your objective. And I think we're basically, it's a broad universe of options with DAOs, right? You can really reprogram any structure inside of a DAO. Like we're kind of looking at the friends with benefits structure where they have working groups, they have a board, but you always reserve the right to have your say in, say, a flat democracy. So my optimal situation would be like delegating votes. One of the most difficult thing that we have come across is just like we operate at a really high velocity, and then everyone is so busy that passing votes, during crunch time, it has been difficult. So like a representative democracy type of model where you can delegate your votes or you can retract that delegation. I think tooling in that area would help out a lot. Ultimately, our policy is like anything exiting the treasury requires a full vote. But, I have come into my entire life right now is just attempting to minimize bureaucracy at all times. And there are minor decisions. There's a whole gradient decision making. And there are minor decisions where, if we don't have the proper structure in place and order, hierarchical order, some of these decisions have to be put before the entire group. And then as your group gets larger and larger, or they're more busy than other DAOs, it becomes there's just a massive quantity of overhead. So, my approach is like stick with anything leaving the treasury has to be a full-fledged vote. It would be optimal if we could have delegation set up, but then like minor board approvals, such as like budgeting for a working group that maybe is in charge of marketing, stuff like that. There was a full vote on the budget for the quarter, let's say. and then marketing has some ideas, I don't think that we need to vote across the entire hierarchy on each idea. And maybe the board would take that on, and then they can have their own voting structure. I mean, I'm a big fan of flat hierarchies, but I think giving the ability for DAOs, especially in terms of tooling, software tooling, to be able to program whatever corporate governmental structure that can come to their that they can dream of. That to me is the ultimate vision for DAOs.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead, Brianna.
Well, no, I just wanted to kind of chat a little bit about like the voter delegation and delegated voting. I'm like of mixed minds on that issue. Like I understand your point. You know, delegation's important. You know, people might not be able to make like the best decision, so maybe giving it to someone else can simplify things and still get their voice heard. I feel like sometimes if the voter delegation tooling is like so optimized, then it might actually discourage participation and people checking in. I think maybe that has to do with like perhaps like how the DAO operates or engages people, whether that be through incentivized voting, which is like obviously a larger topic we could discuss here, or something else. It could also even dial into like the size of the DAO, whether that requires having like subcommittees of this larger structure that is active and then kind of trickles up that information. I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, like with Flamingo and Allow and Neptune, I think what drives a pretty high level of activity and participation and voter participation has a lot to do with the size of it. They're never too large. I mean, a lot of that is just restrictive to like the legal restrictions and regulatory restrictions, but also I think people feeling like they have enough skin in the game to want to participate, as they feel like it's for the larger benefit of the group. So, I mean, I guess like this is a broader conversation around like what the objective of a certain DAO is. But when just thinking through some of these lessons, I don't know. I just wanted to just highlight, I guess, an opposing view possibly, and the importance of like trying to create enough flatness, whether that be through incentivized voting or some other mechanics.
Yeah.
Totally
Sorry, I was
agree.
just rambling there.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
I just wanted to add one point there, which is in many ways, I think we're imposing hierarchy because that's what we know today, because that's the organizations we've been a part of. And there's this assumption that you need a leader. I just think as Web3 matures, some of those assumptions get increasingly challenged. And the one thing that I am proud of in terms of the DAOs we set up, they're super high velocity, right? On the last side, we settled 70 plus transactions in less than a year. We acquired 1,500 NFTs through Flamingo without having a leader. And things are definitely ramping up on the Neptune side too. But at the same time, it operates by rough consensus. So it's just a different approach. So instead of having like a quorum or lots of folks voting or hitting certain thresholds, it operates in this Moloch style voting mechanism, which Amin Soleimani put together along with others, James Young. And it's brilliant. It runs like the internet. You don't need a full consensus to move forward. That's how hierarchical organizations operate. Instead, it's a different mindset. The folks that are paying attention at that point in time are entrusted to make good decisions. And if you're really annoyed or upset with how the DAO operates, you have the ability to exit, to rage quit, to leave and walk away with your capital. But in reality, what happens is the folks that are kind of plugged in at that moment, or the folks that want to pay attention to a particular issue, can weigh in. And that insight and judgment seems to work. I would say that the timing aspects by running an organization by rough consensus seems to have worked really well, just looking at some of the moves we made in the DAOs.
And actually putting that kind of idea of rough consensus into the context of community and like even the Web2 community, like when I saw what was going on with Wall Street Bets, AMC, GameStop, like that was in many ways like internet rough consensus. It was and I saw that and I was like, well, that feels very crypto and very DAO, without, of course, the governance and the bank account. Although I mean, everyone kind of individually acted in unison. I do think like that mechanic of people kind of just coming together, coming to a conclusion, although there wasn't an on-chain vote tied to it, felt just the internet swarm coming together on a decision. DAOs just formalize that a bit more. So I just think, I think the rough consensus is a great point, and we've seen it work in non-DAO contexts too.
I think there's like 12 things that have been said that I want to talk about, but I think one of the big ones that really stands out to me right now, like like, and you know, my perspective is a little different because I guess the other five of you on here are either like actively in DAOs or like, you know, doing votes and building out things. And what I'm seeing is much more of the like potential structuring of them and this entire new like creator class and like, especially from the NFT crypto Twitter side of things, where it's like, wait, like, what is this new democratized capital? Like, is this 1,000 of us putting $50 in? Or is this, you know, like 50 of us putting in $100,000? Like, what is the, you know, what can we do with DAOs? And I think I've seen and heard maybe broad enough strokes, not in this general, but I think people think of DAOs as like everyone should get into all of these DAOs. But a couple of things that were said here, I really think size is key, not just from like the investment perspective or like the regulatory perspective, but like, do you really want to have $5,000 in 50 different pots, or $500 in 1,000 different DAOs, or $100,000 in one DAO? Right? It's different sizes and different strokes for different folks, but like there's got to be a moment where you're bought in and like a part of the community or the DAO that you're involved with, seemingly, or then again you're kind of just buying stocks or shares in different groups that you kind of believe in. Now I think what the Lao does with like seeding DAOs and then being helpful is different than just like an individual throwing 5 or 10 ETH into a whole bunch of different DAOs and then never voting or never being there and hoping for like a gain, right? So I know that's kind of a few different things, but I do think this whole like, you know, if there's 1,000 person DAO that emerges, there's gonna have to be some kind of hierarchy, or there's probably gonna be more tragedy of the commons than there is, right? There's just gonna be tragedy of the commons to some degree, or it's gonna have to hire full-time people, which will de facto put some kind of hierarchy on top of 1,000 person DAO. And so I know a lot of this is kind of theoretical, but I just that's what I think a lot of my conversations look like right now. Is it is theoretical. It is, what is a DAO? Should we do a DAO? How many of us can do a DAO? Are we accredited investors or not? You know, and I can answer like what I think the optimal DAO is, but at the end of the day, there shouldn't be an optimal DAO. That's kind of the point of DAOs. So I know it's kind of a lot, but that's just like my general sense of where things are from people asking questions.
Yeah, those are good points, Jacob. I don't think we have the answers, and that's what's so exciting, I think, to be part of it. A lot of these questions, and so it's not surprising that the folks are different minds here. And I think that's healthy, and all these different ways to explore how to structure things. It's healthy, right? I think a lot like how we took, you know, money for granted, and Bitcoin made us challenge that, and Ethereum does that for art and media and other forms of assets. I think DAOs would do that for organizational structures, and that's really important. I am not, again, fully convinced if you have very, very large DAOs that you need hierarchy. And I think a good example there is Yearn. I think Yearn has done a great job building out really just more like specialized groups that people can join and leave at will, that are responsible for things, that don't necessarily have like some leader that's administering the whole thing, which I think is pretty fascinating, and something I know lots of folks in the ETH ecosystem have been kind of pushing towards on a going forward basis. And I think if you can kind of nail these flatter structures, that's when the real magic will happen. And you'll see DAOs that are not 100 people or 1,000 people, but hundreds of thousands of people that are a bit more fluid and permissionless. So that's a vector that I personally like pay a lot of attention to. And that's probably what I find the most fascinating. Like, I don't want to rebuild like the past, right? I want to build what the future is going to look like. And my sense is, when it comes to DAOs, a lot like the internet, it's just going to be a hell of a lot flatter than what we have today, right? Like what we had today was built because of this hierarchical industrial era that we are emerging out of. And I think we've seen in so many different ways, from Wall Street bets to the mobs on Twitter, it's just a much, much flatter structure.
I just have one other question, Aaron, that I think is something I brought up to you when we last chatted. But you mentioned whether, you know, if it's 6 people forming a DAO together in Wyoming, you might be well off doing 60 signatures on the LLC, right? Like today is DAO day because there's this new legal entity. But what do you think it's going to look like on the legal side with like 1,000 people, 1,000 member LLC, 100,000 member LLC? What do you think is going to be that like movement in and out from like a paperwork or a regulatory perspective of being involved with DAO?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple paths. I mean, we built some tooling to automate a lot of that paperwork through OpenLaw, you know, or I could imagine it being more like click wrap type stuff, like take it or leave it. And I think we've seen like on DX DAO, it was a little bit more click wrappy. the implementation we did on Museum was a little bit more click wrappy, and then with the Lao Flamingo Neptune, we get a nice clean set of documents just because the dollar values are a bit higher.
What we did at Pizza DAO is that we have an LLC with 3 members, and then I think 9 or 11 managers, and then the rest of the community can come on as advisors. And we mostly did that so they could have liability protection if they wanted it.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just introduce the other people that I invited on stage. So I invited Snacks, who I am a member of Pizza DAO with. I invited Andy, who I'm in a couple of DAOs with him, and I know he's in a ton of DAOs. And I also invited John up here, who's a member of DX DAO. And so, like I'm trying to get as many different points of view on this because, again, there's no wrong way to do this, right? And we're figuring out the best way to do this at scale. So.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. I actually have a question for Aaron and kind of the way he's been talking about DAO structure. Like with Pleaser DAO, kind of as James was saying, I think something probably the largest struggle we've had is that we have like 50 very smart people who all have different opinions about what we should be doing, and not necessarily that we disagree, but that it's really hard to stay focused and to like when we have something we need to execute on, like everyone's always has a new idea every day of a different thing we could be doing, a different idea of something we could do. And so without having some level of structure around like, okay, we're doing this thing and this person's taking the lead on it and these people are working on it. I feel like we've struggled why we kind of have come to where we are with maintaining focus and being able to execute on things. And so I'm curious what you guys have done in your different DAOs to be able to do that while not really having people take the lead on different projects or deals that are being done or like big purchases.
Andy, what do you organize on? Discord, Discourse?
Telegram.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that's it, right? Like, so
It might be that.
yeah, that could be one answer, Andy. I feel like you're pretty good. You could take a swipe at this just because I take up a lot of air.
I will say that like Yearn uses Telegram. And
oh yeah, look, I'm not shitting on Telegram at all. But one way that we found effective, and feel free to hop in, is just Discord's great. Like the threading is nice. We've in Flamingo we've created like smaller groups. We call them streams that folks can kind of weigh in on, and there's a little bit more kind of soft polling for quick moving opportunities, and kind of that blended approach works really well. So there's like a let's say we're interested in a particular set of collectible NFTs, there'll be an approval of an allocation, and then folks that are paying attention, if opportunity emerges in that, around that collectible, can just weigh in, and then people trust the group that they're making good decisions.
I think it could also just be difference of mission directives. Like, we're going after extremely extensive, large, iconic pieces, and I guess that there's a little bit more of a ability to kind of have this. I don't know. I can't compare velocities, but I don't think. I guess I'm getting at. I don't think it comes down to the communication medium of Telegram versus Discord so much as like a combination of maybe Flamingo's rough consensus methodology combined with maybe different mission directives. That might just be yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not worried. The pricing doesn't fully matter. I mean, at the time we kind of broke records with our purchase of the CryptoPunk, and that came together super duper fast. The Alien. So I don't know if it's like a dollar amount. I do think they're just like processes, and I do think it's helpful to have kind of a gardener around these DAOs. Like DAOs need helping hands. I think I hope you can. It seems like you can acknowledge that, Jameis, right? Seemingly
Definitely.
that you're serving there, right? But the question is just like, what's the shape of that hand? Like you have DAOs have helping hands like as managers, or it can be more like what happens in Wikipedia, where it's folks that are just supporting, cultivating, curating, gardening almost. And if you look at how Wikipedia operates, and I did a lot with Wikipedia before I got super deep into Bitcoin and ETH, that's how it operated. And there isn't really that much hierarchy or governance there as well. There's just different folks that step up and different kind of organizational structures that have emerged over time. And most of the hierarchy is actually around like edit disputes. So I think I would say it's like a feel communication, and then maybe just having somebody that's kind of dedicated to pushing things along that can be effective, or at least I think it seems to be effective. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the mandate may have something to do with it. I mean, the mandate of Flamingo early on, I guess, I don't know, not to sound corny, but I guess like the thesis or what buckets of NFTs people decided they would like to allocate to, and the percentage of the capital they'd like to allocate to specific buckets, which of course was quite fluid. Was something that was decided early on. So it was like going to be digital art, and they commissioned a bunch of work, and also just have been paying attention to artists that they really like. The second was collectibles. The third was metaverse, and like land, and then the last was gaming, and then now the fifth, I guess you could say, is like the underlying NFT infrastructure investment. So like floating through those five different buckets, like both on the calls and the Discord, is a little bit different than I think getting a community of hundreds of people or whatever, like tens of people to select one high value NFT to purchase and at what purchase amount it should go up to. That feels like slightly like I mean, it feels different to me, and I can understand why uh, the communication around something like that is a little bit different. I mean, like there's a little bit more of lead time with some of the decisions that Flamingo's making. There's thoughtful analysis when it comes to a bulk purchase of a specific collectible or something of that nature. So yeah, I mean that could be a piece of it too, which is fine. But I think that is a good point too. In general, and I think that mandate or thesis is like makes it a little bit easier to get to rough consensus and come to decisions and defer to other people because it's just a slower pace.
Yeah, I think mission statement is like one of our mission statements, right, is pizza should be free at Pizza DAO. So buying pizza is generally a pretty easy call, but but choosing bigger choices need more community say.
If it's a Hawaiian versus a pepperoni pizza, people need to win.
If you are weighing in Hawaiian, you're probably a sociopath. I throw that out there.
Aaron, are you guys using Coordinate at all? Yearn's Coordinate?
No, it's super fascinating. I think it's like these are the tools that I think we need to see emerge. We, on the back end for folks that are more technologists, we use Moloch V2, and then we've built in a nice app on top of it that enables and is closely integrated with Snapshot. We work really closely with the Snapshot team. And then we just are pulling the wrapping off of a new DAO framework called the Tribute DAO framework, which is Moloch V2 compatible, where you can add in adapters and extensions to do a whole bunch of different things. So that could be something simple like swapping assets through Uniswap, or something more complex like bidding automatically on something, or setting up kind of pools where only certain addresses have access to them and can pull from them. So there's different vectors I think we can begin to explore. So we're pretty excited about that.
So a question for the room here. Obviously you guys at Flamingo, Pleaser, the other DAOs represented today have learned a lot because you've done a lot of the work. But what about how can we use all that knowledge and that experience to foster, new DAOs, smaller DAOs, people that want to get involved in the space, and obviously DAOs could be a great opportunity for them, but don't have maybe the big capital to make such investments, but they want to take advantage of the centralized nature and everything that the blockchain affords. So what do you think is the best way that we can start thinking about the medium and smaller size participant?
I think a lot of it's tooling. I just think the costs are just not there when it comes to ETH. Even if depending on what you're using as your kind of underlying core tech, if it's a Gnosis multisig and you want to push through a tremendous amount of transactions, it's a lot of ETH that you need to burn. I think across the 5 DAOs, we burnt like 25 ETH in gas over the past year. So I just don't think there's that many folks that can afford it yet. So for me to feel like we're going to get to a point where medium and smaller folks can participate, it's really up to the technologists to push on that and get lower cost tools. I think there's a lot of exciting enhancements that are coming either natively on ETH or through layer 2 solutions or through rollups, et cetera, which will begin to emerge, which is awesome. And then the second thing is it's really talk to your congressperson because the rules are set up, the game is rigged, and it's not rigged towards medium and small investors. It's super apparent if you know the law. It's really set up for not crypto whales, but just regular old-fashioned boomer whales to kind of make a profit at your expense.
what do you think is like the optimal current, not ETH minimum threshold per person maybe, but what do you think needs to be in the pot to justify like the question that was just asked, right? Like 100 down in the tank. I mean, 100 ETH in the tank, 1,000 ETH in the tank, like with some like rough activity, like a modest amount of activity.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer to that. I will. I mean, I'll say, Sergito, I'd love to hear what you think. But like MDAO to me is fascinating, right? I think they've done an amazing job, and it's not like tens of millions of dollars worth of ETH that's been used to coordinate these 19 or 20, really sharp folks that are knee deep in the metaverse. So I don't know if you need a ton of capital. I think you just need enough to kind of see if there's enough grist in the concept or the mission or what you're hoping to achieve before you turn on the gas.
Right. I think for us, the successes come from different types of capital, right? Like it's easy to just throw money at a problem, but in this case, you're right. We have people like Gareth, who is very, very, very well versed in CryptoVox construction. We have people like Zolly, who can really find good deals on parcels and has a good eye for different location. And so our capital, goes beyond the ETH that has been contributed to the DAO. It's the skill sets that the different members have brought along, and we've also been very diligent in how we, have new members join the DAO, making sure that it's not just ETH levels, that it's really, that other layer of capital that we can lever to continue growing our mission.
That's cool. That makes total sense. I brought Daniel Aitman up here. He hit me up telling me he had a question regarding the Wyoming DAO laws. So Daniel, feel free to ask the P panel and see what they say.
Hey, I appreciate it, and it's very interesting, and I know a couple of faces here, but basically, give a little information about me. My name's Daniel. I'm an accountant. I practice in New York, and my question is basically for the attorneys regarding, Wyoming. Obviously, it's a big thing recognizing DAOs as a legal entity, as a subversion of an LLC. I guess what comes to mind is I know a lot of people in the crypto space value their anonymity. So now, as far as if they form a DAO, every member has to get a K1 and essentially is going to have to basically dox themselves, even more than just name and address, but, social security number. And I'm just curious how that's going to come into play as far as people participating in DAOs that are going to be asked to do that.
Yeah, it's a great point. I can tell you how we've navigated some of those questions in the Lao Flamingo Neptune. So there's members that we still know just by their internet handle or whatever they want to represent themselves as. And actually, there's some of our best members. And what we do as a service provider is we collect that information, and then it's not shared with the membership unless the member wants it to be shared, so that we can satisfy those requirements without doxing them. So it creates a point of centralization, which we're not thrilled about, obviously, but we think it's a fair trade-off so that you can get the legal compliance.
Got it. And then as far as from a tax perspective, I mean, who does the K1 get assigned to at the end of the year?
Right. So same thing. So we as a service provider are authorized by the membership to handle those requirements. And so we can work with the accounting firm, and we're working with a fairly prominent one to make sure that all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. Because I know a lot of people, obviously, they get real finicky if somebody knows their real name or address. You giving somebody social security number, I guess it could get a little hairy.
Yeah, exactly. So we're sensitive to that. I know that there's lots of folks that are really fascinated with purely anonymous DAOs or unstructured DAOs. I'm fascinated by them too. But I think it's going to be a really broad mantle of reimagining organizations, and some of these organizations are going to have to interact with the real world. So
right.
I don't think the Wyoming law, and it wasn't intended to kind of cover every possible use case, but for folks that did want to explore these hopefully flatter structures, they have the ability to do that, and at the same time, dot I's and cross T's for compliance purposes, which is boring stuff, but oddly important.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate the time.
Cool, thanks, guys.
From that. Sorry.
Yeah, go, Jacob.
I was going to say, from that angle, when you take in, the info of everyone involved, one thing that I think is it's cool that everybody on the stage so far kind of has different angles or agrees on some, disagrees on some, and it's going to be interesting to see when the DAO's mission or something that the DAO wants to do has centralized activity, right? Like Pizza DAO comes to mind. I assume they buy pizza, and not everyone in the world accepts Bitcoin. But the Wyoming LLC would allow for a pretty easy access to an EIN, right, for the LLC and a bank account for the LLC. And so, you keep 99% of your cash, or 99% in ETH and 1% in fiat, and you can throw a pizza party whenever you need to. This just makes who's gonna do the centralized purchase, who's gonna buy the laptops not in fiat, or who's gonna buy the not in crypto, who's gonna buy pizza on the Discover card on behalf of the company. I think that this is
Exactly. So we have a Mercury. So yeah, we have an LLC specifically so we can have an EIN, so we can have a bank account because pizzerias don't accept Bitcoin mostly. And when they did, let me tell you, it's way easier to send the money. But we had a Mercury.com bank account, and the members all had cards, debit cards on it, and then we were actually able to mint virtual debit cards with limits and give them to DAO members. So that was super useful.
Hey all, this is John from DXDAO. Sorry, I don't really never used spaces before, so I'm fumbling around here. But I'm really curious to know more about what's happening in Wyoming, and like from my perspective at DXDAO, like I'm very interested in what these kind of like evolutions in the legal framework will mean in the future for DAOs like DXDAO. So we have, there's like 400 addresses that have voting power. Not all are known. There's over 20 contributors in a dozen or more countries on 4 continents, and where everything we do is operating on chain, right? We're not a registered legal entity anywhere, but I imagine in the future, as more organizations like that gain traction, there's going to need to be some more interfaces with the meat space, so to speak, in the real world. And I'm wondering if people think that this evolution in legislation is going to start to pave the way for that kind of thing.
I definitely do. And DXDAO is amazing, super interesting structure. Was fortunate enough to work with Suke and some other folks that were helping pull that together too. So I think what DXDAO has done well, it's kind of like a contract-based DAO. So folks have to agree to things like in a more click-wrappy type way before they join, which makes a lot of sense. There's some limitations there, but it's a good first step. And I think the Wyoming piece is like another good step. And maybe you see some of these inchoate groups kind of emerge over time and more formalize over time, which I think could be healthy too. Like as you become bigger, as the stakes become higher, you start dotting I's and crossing T's and worrying about these types of issues, just so you can scale.
Yeah, well, thank you for everybody's time. I know we're approaching the top of the hour here, and I want to be cognizant of people's time, but I mean, I want to thank everybody up here for coming on and having this conversation, because I think it was super informative. Like I'm a member of a ton of DAOs. I learned a lot myself, so I can only imagine how informative this was for others. So with that, like, happy DAO Day, and thanks for attending. Thank you for sharing the knowledge, and DAOs, as Aaron said on a call yesterday, all roads lead to DAOs. So with that, I'll leave it be. So thanks everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, gmoney.
Thanks, Gmoney.
Thanks, G.